Okay, we are now broadcasting live. So hello everyone and welcome to today's UCA webinar. Apologies that we're starting a bit late. If you've been trying to join us, you've probably been getting a message saying you weren't able to join, but the webinar is now open. So welcome in to today's session. My name is Jamie. I'm here on behalf of Integrate Education Group and our platform IELTSonlinetest.com. And I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. I can see some of you have joined us already in the chat. Hello Arfan, hello Sky, very nice to see you again. Welcome in. If you would like to let us know that you're here, you can say hello in the chat and let us know where you're from. That would be great. So welcome in. Welcome Varencia, Sufyan, Win, Min, hello Dimitro from Ukraine, Wonjin from Korea. Excellent. We've got a really great range of attendees today. Lonyok and Lenar, hi there. So, okay guys, we're filling up now. So thank you for your patience while we've been getting set up today. This is the second webinar that we are hosting in collaboration with the University for Creative Arts in the south of England. And we are very fortunate to be joined today by our presenter, Dr. Neil Bottle, who is with me just now. Hi there, Neil.
Hello, hi everybody.
Welcome to the session today, Neil. Thank you for joining us. It's very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. We're just grappling with a little bit of a technical problem here. So I'm almost done, and then we can transfer the information across.
Excellent.
It's always the way, isn't it? You have a little bit of a problem with that.
Yeah, definitely. So
how many people have we got all together?
We have so far we have about 55 attendees today, so it's a good number of students with us today. You can see Roshan from Saudi Arabia, Rohit from India, Pius, nice to see you again from South Africa. Welcome in. So Dr. Neil is setting up his slides at the moment. I will give you a brief introduction for Neil. Neil is Program Director of Fashion Textiles at the University for Creative Arts in the south of England. He's also an academic, an active researcher, and a textiles designer. He has over 30 years experience in fashion, textiles, design, and industry. And his design work is held in collections around the world. So we're very fortunate to have you joining us today, Neil. Very much looking forward to your presentation. Neil's going to be talking to us on the topic of craft and technology, all that remains. So quite an intriguing topic. I'm really looking forward to hearing about this. Hi there, Pachu. I hope I've just answered your question there by introducing Neil. Let me know if you'd like any more information I can try to provide. Guys, while we're getting our slides set up, it would be good to know a little bit more about you, what your interests are. Are you interested in art, in design, in fashion? Are you interested in coming to study in the UK? You know, what are your goals for this session? And if you have any questions you'd like to ask us, you can ask them in the chat. You can also ask them in the Q&A as well. So you can see, Pachu, you're interested in digital technology. You can see we have quite a few attendees from Vietnam today. Hi there, Neo, nice to see you. It's great, you're one of our long-time webinar attendees, so great to see you. Not just focusing on IELTS today, we're branching out in today's session. Sabrina, interested in graphic design, fantastic.
Okay, so I'm almost ready. The whole thing is like a bit of a nightmare because it said my PowerPoint was couldn't be repaired, and it can. So I think I'm ready to share the first presentation.
Fantastic. That's a good question, Pachu. Is the science background eligible for these courses? Terry, Professor Terry Perk did discuss this a bit in his webinar on Wednesday about the application criteria for some of the courses, and that, yeah, it does seem that, you know, that you can come, it's possible to transition from a variety of backgrounds and educational backgrounds. So I'm sure Neil will be able to discuss this in a bit more detail shortly.
Yes, yeah, I can do that. So do you want me to share my screen now?
Yep, Neil, if your slides are ready, then please go ahead. Yep.
Okay.
Excellent. Guys, I can mention as well that, you know, throughout the presentation today, you can chat to us using the chat box here. One thing that can really help is if you change your chat settings to all panelists and attendees. So that will let everybody see your comments. We can all have the same conversation. So just above the chat box, there's a setting that says all panelists and attendees. If you want to change your settings, then yeah, we can all see your comments. Also, if you have questions for Neil, any general questions about his presentation, about studying in the UK, you can ask them in the chat. If we don't address them right away, you can add them to the Q&A box and we'll have a bit more time to discuss them after the presentation. Okay.
Okay, so can you see my screen?
I can. I think if you want to turn your slides to full screen, like if you go into slideshow, display, like start PowerPoint or start slideshow, then that will make your slides go full screen, basically.
Okay, so is that one?
Let's see. That is looking good. That's the one. That's it.
Okay, so who can everyone see me or just the screen?
What can you see, guys? Can you see Neil and the slides? Yep, Raj is saying both. Everyone is saying yes, we can see.
Fantastic. Okay. So brilliant. Okay. Yes. So okay. Good afternoon, good morning, everybody, depending on where you are. Really nice to be meeting you. Sorry about the slight delay to the presentation. We had a little bit of a technical glitch. Just to recap on some of the things that have been said, my background is in printed textiles and fashion. I've been running around the fashion textiles business for about 20 years before I went into education. And I've taught at undergraduate level. I've taught at further education level and also at master's level. So I started in further education, then I moved into undergraduate for about 10 years. And then more recently, I've been working in master's level education as well. So just to give you a bit background about my educational experience, I have mainly worked in the UK, but I did spend a period of time living in the UAE, in Dubai, near Dubai. And also I've done a lot of trips to China, India, and the UAE doing recruitment trips for the university. So I did hear a lovely mix of names that were there that you read out, and that's really nice to see your names there from all around the world. So I've got quite a lot of experience in interviewing students at lots of different levels, students that are wanting to study a 3-year undergraduate or indeed a master's level course. So if you think of any questions later on, we can look at that and you can maybe ask me some things about what it's like to do a master's course. And in fact, or any of the courses that we offer, and also why you might want to do that. There are lots of reasons why you want to study at a higher level, and it's often thinking of the right time to do that. Do you get work experience first, or do you do that straight from your undergraduate? So we can talk about some of those things, but let's look at the sort of creative research presentation that I was going to show you today. And really what I wanted to do was to give you a little bit of idea about how I started my own creative practice and all the kind of different directions that's taken me in. I think basically I started doing very commercial textiles, and then I've moved into more of a kind of fine art textile practice. The images that I create are very graphic. So I think it'll touch fine art, graphics, fashion and textiles. It should be quite broad reaching for you all. So I'm going to start that now. Okay, so creative beginnings. Do you think everyone can hear me okay? Have we got good sound? I've lost the Integrate team sound.
Oh, sorry, I'm back.
That's
Sorry.
it, you're back. Okay. Do you think
I was just saying, Neil, I think everyone can hear you okay. Some students are saying.
Fantastic. Okay, that's brilliant. Okay. So this first image that you can see here is a picture of me many years ago. The hair was a lot darker color, and this is me in my textile design studio, and I had studied a printed textiles degree at university, and then I went straight out into the sort of fashion textiles industry in the UK. I was very lucky. I won a couple of prizes when I was at university, and I had some really good opportunities to get going. This is a long time ago. It's actually the end of the 80s, so we're talking 30 years. So it's a very long time ago, and I started hand printing and making my own textiles. So hand painting and then screen printing over the top. So here we can see a detail of one of the images that I was creating. Lots of sort of layering and very fine quality screen printing that goes over the top of color that's applied to fabric. So it was quite a complicated, time-consuming kind of process that I was using. And so we found a really good niche in the market for things that were very handcrafted and carefully made, printed onto really expensive, beautiful quality silks. A lot of my silk came from China. The best quality silk seems to come from China, very beautifully woven. And so I started to sort of build a reputation, and I started to sell my work to, I did trade fairs, I did small selling events in London. I got spotted by a number of agencies that dealt with selling to companies all around the world. So I started to sell work to New York and to actually Hong Kong and China and Taipei as well, and all over America and in London. So within 2 or 3 years of leaving university, I'd sort of established quite a good network of galleries and shops and people that were collecting and selling the work. Sometimes when I look back on it, it was a very long time ago, I look back on it and think, how did I do that? How did that kind of happen? And I think sometimes you have to be in the right place at the right time with the right work. So this is pre-digital. This is a time when you would network with people. And the way I did it was I would apply for everything, and I would do lots and lots of exhibitions and get my work out there and try to be seen in as many places as I could. There was a different structure in the UK at the time. There were lots more opportunities for sort of craft makers. There were institutions like the Crafts Council that would give you money. And I was very lucky. I applied for a grant, which was £10,000. And I got that from the Crafts Council sort of mid-90s. And then I bought equipment and started to develop my business. So this piece you can see on the screen is actually done for the Royal Academy of Arts in London. It's a very prestigious art gallery in London. So I started to create different pieces of work for those institutions. So I had a kind of fashion business. We were selling to Liberties and Harrods. Some of you might have heard of Harrods in London, in Knightsbridge. This collection I did for the Guggenheim Museum in New York. I put this one in because I thought this would be interesting for those of you that might be near Hong Kong or China. This is a fantastic department store called Joyce. It's in Hong Kong. And you can see the collection of handmade textiles that I supplied to Joyce stores. Joyce was the first Chinese entrepreneur who took designer labels out to Hong Kong and Taipei in the 1960s. She developed this beautiful department store. And this is a picture of Linda Evangelista on the front cover of the magazine. And there's a picture of my work inside. So this was a great opportunity. I was probably in my mid to late 20s by this time. And we were really, really kind of going for every opportunity that came our way. Everything was handmade, layered and printed in-house in my very small studio. Probably within 5 years, I had about 5 people working for me, doing all of the textiles in the studio. The sewing and manufacture of some of the garments would be done outside, that would be done in factories that I outsourced to. So we go from this, which is all about digital and hand production, into the real core of the talk today, which is about my journey into digital and how I now embrace digital media into my practice. And that's the bit that I think will appeal to the graphic designers, the architects, the fine artists, or other disciplines, people who might be listening. You might be doing an illustration course and you might be thinking, I'd really love to do a master's in fine art or fashion or something different. And I think sometimes that shift in discipline can be a really exciting thing. So I had this image these designs were done in about 2003, 2004. And this is when I first started teaching. I'd been running quite a successful business for about 15 years. And I started to do teaching part-time. I really enjoyed the interaction with students doing lots of different subjects and working with young people. It was kind of interesting. And I started teaching like 1 or 2 days a week and then managing my craft practice alongside that. So I'd been doing fashion, interiors, all kinds of different projects with different companies. But I'd kind of got known working for a lot of the sort of key institutions around the world. So I had pieces in the Victoria and Albert Museum. I'd done a piece for the Cooper Hewitt Museum in New York. I'd worked for the Royal Opera House. And this is another one of the great British museums. This is actually the British Museum. And I actually had an email. By then, yes, we'd got onto email in 2003. And I had an inquiry that basically said, oh, we'd like you to come and do a collection for us. So these images here represent my first pieces it was really the end of hand production going into digital. And I was asked to create a digital collection for the British Museum. To cut a very long story short, I basically had no idea how to use Photoshop. I had no idea what I was doing, but they gave me 3 months to go away and meet the challenge, go away and learn how to do it digitally, and then come back with your first digital collection. So I had to teach myself Photoshop and how to print digitally onto fabric. So around this time, 2002, 3, 4, it was the very, very beginnings of digital media and textiles. Now, the interesting thing is that for graphic design and illustration and to photography, in photography to a certain extent, those disciplines had embraced digital media much earlier on in the 90s. And so those kind of courses at university and those creative practitioners had begun to use digital media in their practice. It came much later to textiles because the technology is more complicated to translate your work onto digital. So this particular piece is, I'm sorry, the slide's a little bit out of focus for some reason, but this is the first time that I had printed doing a digital design. And this is the layout of a man's tie. And here you can see the very basic sort of template in Photoshop, that allows you to cut that pattern out. This was a collection that I did that was digitally printed onto fabric and then pleated. So around 2009, 8 or 9, I started to become more interested in the digital side of design and moving away from the handcrafted textiles. By then, I'd been working probably 20 years doing textiles by hand, and I was really excited about the idea of changing direction and becoming a digital designer. So I had an opportunity to actually work on the establishing of an undergraduate course at Sharjah University, which was when I moved out to Dubai. And I lived there for 6 months, and I became involved in setting up some new programs for the Sheikh of Sharjah. And that was a really fantastic project. I was kind of headhunted, spotted to do that. And so I went out there for 6 months and I developed that program. We had all the latest digital technology there. And so that was my opportunity to really become much more involved in digital media. When I returned to the UK, I then had the opportunity to set up the program that I run now. So I now run the Fashion Textiles BA at UCL Rochester and the MA in Printed Textiles. So once I'd returned to the UK, I was very excited to set up those courses in digital media. The piece you can see on the screen now is actually a backdrop, a wall hanging, and a garment that I made for the Lace Museum in France. This was a research project that I was involved in. And it's a very complicated sort of collage of image done for that garment. One of the things that came out of that is that a lot of people said to me, I don't really understand what you're talking about. When I would do talks about my work, they would say, well, you've started screen printing and now you're designing in Photoshop. How does it work and what happens? And I was trying to describe to this customer, this person at the exhibition, how for me it was a fabulous transition, because screen printing is all about layers of color and screen, which are built up with the silk screen on the fabric. And Photoshop is very similar. We work in layers and we think in transparencies of color, which are built up on top of each other. So there was a lovely kind of parallel between the hand process and the digital process. And that's the thing that I guess made it easy for me to change from hand into digital. This book that you can see on screen was really a kind of demonstration of how all of that works, that layering and the functionality of Photoshop in a book. Here you can see on screen some of the thinking behind the process, the design of that garment, and all of the layering in Photoshop. So we're now moving forward to about 2014, 15 time. We did a very big project at the university. It's a research project called Encountering Digital. And I did a series of wall hangings, which you can see on the image. And here there was a sofa. So I was quite interested in doing something three-dimensional using what is effectively a flat design process and taking it into 3D. So what I actually did was created a 360-degree textile image that wrapped around this sofa. It was very, very complicated. And here you can see on the screen some of the images from my sketchbook. So I was actually working with a furniture company that were making furniture, wood, horsehair, calico, webbing and fabric to create the furniture. It's a very traditional method of making furniture. They'd never worked with a designer who created the fabric digitally. So that was really interesting for me to combine my knowledge of crafted objects with a digital process. And I really enjoyed that. Moving forward, I start to move away from commercial design and commercial textiles into a slightly more conceptual way of working. And I became really interested in how technology could not only change design, but how technology could change our behavior and our kind of creative thinking. So The next project, called All That Remains, focuses on our interaction with photography. I use quite a lot of photography in my design practice, in my textiles, and I became really interested in a series of archive photographs that came to light after my grandmother died. I found some pictures of her, and I found some family photographs, and I was thinking about how our relationship with photography has changed since we have become obsessed with the selfie and social media. So here you can see an image of a headline about Instagram killing the fashion magazine. What happens next? And we can see a very interesting image here, because we have a young woman who is creating this selfie pout with her lips, the sort of desirable cherry red lip pose that lots of young women aspire to on Instagram. And in fact, people have stopped smiling in photographs. People don't really smile on Instagram anymore, they pout. So this is quite interesting, because it's led to a different kind of photograph that we take, and in fact a different kind of look in fashion. And lots of young women in the UK are having their lips enhanced with silicone to replicate the perfect model pout. And so they actually start to acquire a slightly strange, bizarre, surgically enhanced, permanent grin, which I think is quite interesting. So here we've got the extremes that people will go to get the perfect selfie, and people will do the most bizarre things to get the ultimate selfie. And we have seen recently the first selfie deaths, or deaths related to people doing ridiculous things. And we do have an Indian couple here who plunged to their death in a ravine in the bid to get the perfect selfie, just stepping back too far, over the edge of the cliff. So I think that's really interesting, that what people will do. And this is quite interesting. This is the Dolce & Gabbana selfie dress, where the models came out onto the catwalk, not interested in the paparazzi any longer, or the professional photographs. They were much more interested in capturing their own image of how they looked on the catwalk. And the garments have got the holiday photo snaps on the dresses, and they're totally preoccupied with their own image. So with all of that in the mix, I proceeded on All That Remains. I had actually reached the grand old age of 53, and I'd been making work for 30 years, and I thought, what now? I'd done all the department stores, I'd done the exhibitions, got work in galleries and museums and things like that, and I thought, well, what now? What do I want to do? And I kind of wanted to go into a much more conceptual way of working. So here we can see me holding a photograph of my grandfather when he was a very small child, holding his tiny beaten up old teddy bear. And I thought this image is really, really beautiful. And I like the fact that the image is slightly damaged, it's faded, and it's a physical object in its own right. And coming across this image that's probably 100 years old, it was very interesting. I started to wonder if my son is actually 24 now, and I wondered if any of his children would ever have images of themselves like this discovered in future. And the reality is no, because their images will be captured on Instagram and digitally, and those images will degrade and suffer from data rot or digital rusting, and those digital files will disappear into a virtual cloud. So this kind of experience suddenly struck me as quite unique. The age that I am, the beginnings of digital textiles, and the end of analog photography, really, the end of that recording and archiving memories that we have in a physical form. So it's actually all about the digital experience and how we record images. And I'm sitting in my studio and I have dozens of these things, these little hard drive boxes that are full of images that I never look at. I have no idea where they are. I can't find anything. So it's a really interesting sort of overload of data. Whereas after my grandmother died, there was a beautiful shoebox of very carefully selected and edited images that had been kept for nearly 100 years. And there's something about that that was quite poignant. And so I embarked on All That Remains. After my grandmother died, I did actually spend a period of time living in a building where she had lived. And it's a building which has stayed in my family. And the building has lots and lots of memories of childhood where things began. Here we can see part of the exhibition, All That Remains. It was a 2-year project, and it was a project to build up a series of pieces to exhibit in an exhibition. And I did think that I needed some funding for this. It was quite expensive to make the work. So I had some funding from UCA, and I also had some external funding from 2 galleries, one in London and one in North Wales. So I had some funding, I had some money, and I had the idea to pursue this new project. So here we can see the gallery space, and you can see in there a number of objects and artifacts that sparked memory from a pre-digital age. And this is the key image from All That Remains. This is a picture of my grandmother. She died about 5 years ago at the age of 96. So she would have been 101 now. So this image, the photograph, the main photograph in this image was taken around 1938 to 1940. And I think there was something really interesting about this image. We're simultaneously drinking there. And this image would have been a studio photograph taken in a professional studio. It would have been a very special occasion. She would have gotten her hair done beautifully. She would have put her best dress on. She would have gone to the photographic studio and had this image taken. And she's holding a young child who is about 18 months old. And that child is actually my mother, who is now 82. So at that time, there were not many photographs taken of them as a family. And so there probably would have been 1 or 2 or 3 photographs at that time similar to this. And only this one survives of its type. So that's really interesting. If I think of my son, who is a millennial, so he's 24, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of images of him as a young child, digitally recorded and growing up. So it struck me how special this image was. And so I started to create a digital collage of physical artifacts, objects, and memories of that particular time. So in the background here, I don't know whether my cursor, whether you can see that on the screen. Can you see me moving that cursor?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, it just about comes up. In the background here, you can see a view from a window of a building. So that view is a photograph that was taken in the 1970s of the view from the window of the apartment that my grandparents used to live in. There's a map here where you can see a map that records the location of where they used to live. There are lots of architectural plans of the building. There are lots of different memories and sort of artifacts of objects that are buried in layers in this collage. And down here we have a kind of swirling mixture of images that blend hundreds of different images that I've scanned that were physical objects, physical photographs that I've scanned at high resolution and then worked into a collage. And this to me was meant to represent almost a kind of pre-digital version of Instagram, or the way that our cameras record photographs now. They kind of mass them all together in this pixelated format. And I wanted to recreate that with an analog image. So that's the key image of the show. Here's a close-up of that particular area. And you can see there's a picture of a young child here looking out, buried in all of these different images. And that's a picture of me when I was about 4 years old. And I'm kind of really peeping out from the past, looking into the future at a representation of how we kind of pixelate images. And we get very used to things being pixelated and recorded in digital fragments. And so that's something I wanted to kind of represent. It's all about our relationship with photography. And here we can see many, many photographs of my family through the ages, all of which are recorded and in an analog setting. Here we can see the workflow.
If I could ask a quick question, a couple of the students in the chat were asking about the dancing girls at the bottom of the image.
Okay, yeah.
If you have a moment to address that,
yeah,
would be great. Yeah.
This little picture down here is a tiny, tiny photograph of my mother. And this one is quite significant because she's very old now and her mobility is not very good. But she often talks about the memory of when she was a small girl. She used to go to ballet classes and she could stand up on these 2 points. Her little tiny feet could balance in these ballet slippers. And I have this little tiny photograph of her on these points as a very young child. And so it's the only photograph that exists of her dancing. You know, no YouTube, no digital photographs, no Instagram. So it's quite a precious object now that she is so very old. And she's very fragile now as an old person. She can't move very much. So the idea of her being young and limber is really exciting. What I did here, I actually made it into a silhouette. I thought the shape was really beautiful. And I wanted to really acknowledge my textile history, which is about repeat patterns. So I've made this kind of daisy chain repeat pattern of her holding out her dress in her sort of moment of being on these little points, her ballet slippers. Behind there, we have a backdrop. And if I move to this image, you'll see there's some handwriting. This handwriting is from my grandfather, and he had a little notebook, which I found after he died. It was actually in his own handwriting, and it was all of the different notes that he'd made, taking his photographs on a particular day. He was an amateur photographer, and so he's recording the aperture settings on his camera on a sunny day. And I thought there was something lovely about putting his writing back with the image of his daughter as a young child. And I was thinking about the memories of him as a very, very old man. And lots of the images in this collage are his photographs of that building. When I was very young, I used to go and see my grandparents in this building, and my grandmother would be sewing and making garments and doing these kind of things. And so that's when, as a very young child, I started to become creative. I took an interest in fashion and textiles. And so it's a kind of journey which started in that place. So in this image, you can see the layering that's involved in the digital program, the layering of drawings, maps, photography, artifacts, how the image starts to come together. From a technical point of view, I've always loved working really technically with dye chemistry and textile processes. So here you can see some of the technical testing to get the right quality on the fabric. The color is really, really important to me. And any of you that may have tried working in digital photography, it's actually digital textiles is actually quite complicated to get the color right. So we've got lots of series of different color profiling and testing. It's really important to me to use the highest quality digital print available, but at the same time, I want to reflect the vintage quality of the subject matter. Digital textiles can be very flat. It can be too perfect. So I spend a lot of my time, which is quite weird really, using the best quality print, but making it look analog, making it look grainy and textured. And you can see here the surface of the fabric. I'm trying to apply a kind of depth to that surface. So I want it to be I want it to have a vintage feel. So here you can see me in my studio. A whole roll of digital fabric has arrived. I'm cutting it out on the floor. And to me, this is really miraculous, because for 20 years, I would mix up dyes and make color and expose things on screens and build up my textiles by a layer upon layer of physical screen, using print tables and equipment and things like that. Now it's very much about the computer and a digital process. But for me, the importance is to try and retain the sort of the spirit of who I am as an artist or designer in a digital process. So essentially my journey from craft to digital has been one about retaining the quality of my previous work. So to be able to do that digitally and then send that to a factory, and then it's digitally printed, and I get a roll of fabric back, and here I am unrolling this fabric, cutting it out, thinking, fantastic, you know, I didn't have to print this by hand. So it allows me, the digital process essentially allows me to be very creative, but also not to have to deal with production. I've had 20 years of running production in my own business. So really for me, it's the design that I want to do, the creativity, not the production, which is really interesting. This particular piece is inspired by Instagram. And so I wanted to create something that played around with the idea of this very iconic image of my grandmother with Instagram. I wanted it to date in a sense. I think in 20 years back, we'll look back at this and think, oh, that really dated. It's Instagram. That's what Instagram used to look like. So it was playing around with the images of things that I'm following. So we've got the picture of my grandmother, and there's a little picture of me holding an umbrella there, grinning. And the memory here is everything from the past. The present here is a screenshot of the image I was working on. And then here we've got the future, which is my son's Instagram, because I guess his Instagram will take him into the future. Here we're always connected because we are literally always online, 24 hours. And the battery is, I'm being ambitious, it's 3/4 full, because I guess I'm more than halfway through my career. So there was a bit of fun with that one. So on this one, you can see the surface qualities that I'm trying to build up in digital textiles. I don't want it to be flat. I want it to feel rich and layered, but also to have this sense that somehow it's kind of pixelated. It's got this quality that there's an interaction between digital and hand. This particular image is of my great-grandmother, my grandfather's mother. It's the only single image that exists of her as a young woman. And there's something magical about that. And I had only ever seen this picture during this project. I'd never seen it before until after my grandmother died. And so in a sense, it had none of the memories that the other photographs I had attached to them. So in other words, there were many photographs that we'd had, and we had got them out at Christmas time and birthdays, and there would be memories attached to those photographs because people said, oh, don't you remember, that's when this happened, or that's when that happened. And so in a sense, those objects have all of this memory attached to them, whereas this photograph was something different. This only had the memories that I could imagine may have happened. So I was playing around with memory and photography. And in a sense now, we record images in such a different way through Instagram that we are going to build up a different relationship with that. And for example, when I was at university, I probably have 2 or 3 images of myself at university in the 80s, 1980s, whereas you guys probably have thousands and thousands of images of yourself recorded at every moment. And so your relationship is different with yourself growing up. And than mine was. So here we can see the exhibition, All That Remains, in the gallery space at the Ruthven Crafts Centre. It was quite a big exhibition, and I did a series of, I think I did 30 wall pieces. Some of them were framed, fabric stretched, and then had a wooden frame on them, and others were like wall hangings, really, just backed in fabric. You can see the objects, the objects, the artifacts in the case. And then here we have the pieces working in a series, in a sense. The piece on the left, you can see that sort of very iconic image of my grandfather when he was a young man in the war, but overlaid are these sort of Instagram bubbles of other memories. So it's kind of playing around with that interface of Instagram and vintage photography. I also did a series of accessories, cushions and scarves and other things that went with the piece. There's the close-up here, so you can see the really, really fine quality that I've got with the digital printing on fabric. And that's something I'm kind of obsessed with. I'm obsessed with color and detail. This one is called Serendipity. It's all about the happy accident of, I was obsessed with umbrellas as a young child. So I often have memories where people tell me that I was obsessed with them. I don't remember it. And again, it's a memory that's been implanted in my brain somehow. People remember it, my family remember it, but I don't. And I think there's something interesting around what we really remember and what we're told we remember. Here we've got a close-up of the cushions. All of this you can see on my website. Oh, okay. So I think that might be the last one of the presentation. What we could do now here is I'm going to try and get the second presentation across because we had a little bit of problem with that technically. So I'm going to try and copy that across. And then what I thought I could do is maybe if anyone's got any questions about this first presentation, I can answer those. And then we could maybe move on to the UCA presentation, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah, Neil, there have been quite a few questions coming in during your presentation. So if it's all right, I can read some of them out to you.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
Setting up the second slides. Yeah, excellent. Some really nice comments in the chat as well. People are saying they love the color of the fabric. It's yeah, incredible. It took ages, the love that you've put into it. And yeah, some lovely feedback, guys. So thank you for that. Is that Stephen? Stephen says, this is literally what I feel like I see in my memories. Wow, that's quite poetic, Stephen. Very, very nice. So let's see.
Can I just respond to that one?
Sure, yeah.
I was just going to say there's something really interesting in that comment, in that when I've had visitors to the exhibition, they've often said to me that although the images in the exhibition in these pieces are very personal, it's my grandmother, my grandfather, my mother, there's something about them that in a way touches a wider audience, because I think many people, particularly people my age or different ages, will have pictures of their grandmother, their mother, taken a generation in the past. So they have that sort of sense that there are often similar events, birthdays, Christmas and holidays that are recorded. And often we have these dusty old photographs in a shoebox. And what do we do with them? How do we look after those kind of things? So there's something interesting in that, I think, that although they're very personal to me, there is a wider kind of reach to those images, which I really enjoyed, and I think other people enjoyed that in the exhibition as well.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. I mean, looking at the picture of your mother, like it struck me like I have a very similar photo, and that, you know, yeah, as you say, it's, you know, one of the only sort of images of her, you know, at that age, and that maybe as people, you know, as sort of newer generations, maybe that's something that is being lost, that, you know,
yeah,
we might not have those kind of photos, you know, to pass on to our children. So yeah, it's really really interesting. Let's see, a question here from, there was a question about the map as
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
which we could see in the background. A couple of students were asking about that.
This
Yeah,
this map here. Yeah.
to mention, I think, yeah, if it's in this image or maybe one of the previous ones with the uh,
This one.
I think it, Galaxy, is this the image you were referring to? We've covered quite a few. I think I remember seeing it a bit earlier on when we were discussing the one of your mother and the picture of her dancing. Let's see. Ah, Galaxy, you said yes, that's it. So it was the one we were looking at just before. This one we're on now, Fong and
Okay.
Galaxy.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
This. I think it's difficult because I mean, it was a 2-year research project. So, in 20 minutes or half an hour, you're trying to sort of cover a certain amount of detail, but you can't kind of, I don't want to bore everyone with too much detail, but basically, um, the language of fabric is quite interesting because, from when we're born to when we die, we are wrapped in fabric. We are surrounded by fabric in our everyday lives. And it's also entered our language. So if you're feeling very anxious, you might say, you feel like you're falling apart at the seams, or my nerves are frayed. And there's something interesting around that language of fabric. So one of the things that occurred to me was that about memory and photography is that what are real memories and what are memories that are actually recorded in the photograph. So again, in this particular building that I ended up living in, where my grandparents had lived, I was sitting on a chair looking out the window of that view that you can see here in this image. This is the same view that I had seen as a small child, age 5, 50 years later, looking at the same view, thinking, what can I remember? What is real? And what is actually buried in the fabric of this building? So that word, the fabric of this building is a common term. And so I kind of thought that actually, what do buildings hold? How many memories are kind of ghost memories there? So it occurred to me that it was quite important to not only record this image of that building, but also to record its location. So that map there is really the location of the building, where my grandparents used to live and where I grew up. And I wanted to record that, and it seemed appropriate to use a vintage quality map because I liked that idea. So that kind of explains that.
Mm. Amazing, amazing, great. Okay, guys. I mean, I'm aware that time is moving on, Neil. So I don't know
Right.
if you'd like to take
We've
some more questions.
we've had a little bit of a technical glitch with the UCA presentation. So what I'm wondering about doing is maybe just doing it informally and fielding questions as we go. Would that be a good idea?
Sure. Yeah, that would be fine. If you, I don't know if you can email it to me and I could open it. It would be one option, but if you would
Yeah,
like
what
to,
I wanted to do was to, I can plug it into my computer, but then I'm going to sort of have to wade through files in front of everyone. If everyone doesn't mind that, I can just do that. It won't copy across for some reason. I think there's a problem with my machine. So I'm just going to close this presentation. Can you still see me okay?
yeah, we can see. Yep,
Okay.
we've gone
Okay.
full screen now.
So what would be a good idea is while I'm finding the presentation, could we just have an idea about if anyone's studying at a particular level, if we have people there that want to maybe study at master's level, or whatever, or is it mainly undergrad inquiries? Is it possible to?
Yeah, sure. We can ask if anyone, if you're in the chat, if you could let us know what your plan for study is. Are you planning to take an undergrad course, a master's course? What kind of study are you interested in? It'd be good to hear, a bit more about your plans for study. And
Great, I've got it. I've got it. Here we
yes,
go.
exactly. We were a little bit late, so we'll run over a little bit for this session, but hopefully, if you don't mind staying with us a bit later. I know it might be quite late where some of you are, so we'll try and not keep you up for
Okay.
too long. Okay.
How long should I do this for? Should I just whistle for it really quickly?
Yeah. That could be a good idea.
What,
Yeah, because we're
10, what do we think? 10 minutes, 15 minutes?
I think I think 10 minutes if
10
you,
minutes, okay.
you
Have
can.
you have you got, can you see the presentation on the screen now?
No, we're not
Oh, okay.
sharing that just yet.
I
So
think I've done the wrong thing. I just need to share. Okay, let's share.
okay. Sabrina is saying she is planning to take a master's degree, so she's studying at master's. Will be studying at master's level.
Okay. Is
Okay.
that, can you see the presentation now?
We can, yeah. So you
You can
can
see
go
it, great.
into full
Okay,
screen.
okay. And if I do that, can you still see it?
Yep, that's gone full screen now. So
Great. Okay. Okay. So we've got a couple of people that are looking at masters education and some for undergraduate maybe. The first thing is if you're thinking of if I was interviewing somebody right now in India or China, that I would ask, the first question I would ask them is about the subject that they want to study. So there could be people that want to change disciplines from, for example, we might get people that are working in, you know, some people, they've done undergraduates which are not in a creative subject. That can be quite tricky. So if someone's wanting to come from a science background, for example, or an arts or humanities background, and they want to change to fine art or graphic design or architecture, that can be a little bit tricky. If somebody has got a couple of years work experience in a creative field, then that can make quite a big difference. If not, they would really need to build up a portfolio and evidence that they have the creative skills to take that course, because the basic skills of, say, fashion design or textiles are taught at the undergraduate level. So even though you might have a fantastic first class honours in, you know, commerce, it doesn't necessarily prepare you to be studying at master's level in a creative field. I've had examples where people have gone off and they've got work experience, they've come back, or they just have a fantastic creative talent to make things. They've been doing things their whole lives, but they just didn't study it for undergraduate level, then they can apply. So often it's a case by case basis. Another situation, so you definitely have to have a creative portfolio for masters if you want to do a creative subject. Photography can be a slight exception because often people can be really technically very good at photography. You're not painting and drawing, so it's actually quicker to make up those skills. So photography can be an exception. And also we have a number of business courses in our School of Business. So if you want to study at one of our business school courses, you would really need your academic qualifications and not a creative portfolio. But if you're wanting to do fine art, graphic design, illustration, architecture, textiles, any of those sort of core subjects, you would need some creative portfolio. For example, I had a student in my master's textiles group, and she'd done her undergraduate in graphic design. She'd been working as a graphic designer for several years. She was very talented, very skilled, but she didn't know anything about printed textiles. In that instance, she was able to apply to the course and she got a place. We had a number of top-up sessions. We could top up her skills in dye chemistry and screen printing, but she was excellent in digital design. So she had the right combination to apply for the course, and she had a very good portfolio. So she did that. I often get students that come onto my course from fine art or from a fashion background wanting to shift into textiles, and that can work. So really, if you're interested, the best thing to do is to try and look online at the course. It's really to look at the nature of what you're wanting to do. And I'm just going to forward to a slide where you've got, you know, if you're looking at these types of careers, you want to be a jewelry designer, or you want to work in fashion, or you want to work in animation, you really need to find out a little bit about that. There's tons of information online on our website, so you can find out what you want to study. You do need a creative portfolio as such. And also on the website, there is portfolio guidance, so you can find out what you need to show. We often do interviews in country. I travel to various different countries to interview people, or it can be done online. You can apply directly to one of our courses. You can put your portfolio together. I'm just going to scroll through some of these slides so you can see some of the kind of really exciting things about studying in the UK. For example, 1 in 11 jobs in the economy are creative, which is really high. Creative industries are growing at almost twice the rate of the wider UK economy. So it's a really good area to go into. It's worth £105 billion. I'm not going to read all these out. I'm going to just scroll through as I'm talking to you, because I want to pick up on some things that are particular to what you might be thinking about studying. So in terms of what to get together for your portfolio, it would really be the best of your undergraduate work if it is from a creative subject. And if you're wanting to shift disciplines, you can always contact the course leader. If you go onto the website, look at master's level qualification, if you look on the printed textiles, you'll find a profile about me. You can click on that, and underneath is my email underneath. So you could write to me and you could say, I'm really interested in doing your MA. This is the kind of work that I'm doing. Do you think I would be able to go on the course? So we can start a dialogue. If you think you're ready for an application, you can make a direct application to our admissions department. It's all on the website. And then they can basically send your portfolio to me. I will look at that, or it could be for architecture or one of a number of courses we do. And an expert in that field, the program director, will look at it and they will say to you, yeah, that's great, you've got a place. Sometimes we need to see a little bit more. We need a little bit more evidence of what you might be wanting to do, and then you can apply for that. You normally need a 2-1 or a similar level of qualification to apply for masters. You'll also need an IELTS exam, which is 6.0 for most of our courses. The IELTS is a visa regulation. So I know for some of you, your first language is English, so that won't be a problem. But for some of you, English is your second language. Even so, you still need to have an IELTS as an overseas student, and you can need to get that qualification as part of your offer. Basically, just want to cover why you want to do a master's. More and more, I'm meeting students who are wanting to do a master's because they may actually have done an undergraduate and they might be working in the industry, but they feel they've reached a level where they're competing with other students who have a master's course. And so they need to break up into the next level. They might want to go into design management or studio manager, and they feel that they really need that extra qualification to give them the edge compared with other students. Also, if you study in the UK, UK art schools are, they have an amazing reputation, and they are some of the best in the world. And also, there's a very different aesthetic, there's a very different culture. That international creative approach that you will learn is a great thing on your CV. So many companies are international now, they're working online. Companies have offices all around the world, but admittedly, if you've got a master's course from the UK, that would certainly put you at an advantage to other courses, to other applicants who are applying. So we're in the top 33 of all UK universities. We are #1 specialist university for the creative arts in the UK, which is really exciting. Our teaching has TEF Gold quality, and that puts us in the top 10 of UK universities. We have really great employment statistics, actually. 96.9% of our students are in employment within 6 years of leaving university, which is really good. Many of our courses have placement or internship opportunities built into the program. We do a number, so you'll get to work with a number of people, companies in the industry. We also run live projects, so you will actually be able to work with somebody from the industry will come in and meet you in the university, in the studio, and set your project. You'll be able to get that kind of feedback from the industry. Most of the courses, all of the courses have a database of companies that they work with. So for example, my students get the chance to do internships at Alexander McQueen and Peter Pilotto. They also will be able to take part in graduate shows that take place in London, such as Graduate Fashion Week and the New Designers Exhibition. Here you can see a list of some of the different disciplines that we cover. It really is very wide, including acting and performance. We have film production, graphic design, journalism, photography. It's pretty much everything you can imagine in a creative field. Location just outside London. I think it's really important to be near London. All of our campuses are less than 1 hour from London, but equally just outside London, it's a slightly, it's a more supportive environment. Our campuses are quite small, particularly if you're coming from an international country, you want to make friends and settle in. Some universities are so huge that it's more difficult to make friends. So people will set in. For example, the campus where I work is Rochester. It's 35 minutes from London. I know all of my students by name. I know their work. It's much easier to settle in, and it's much cheaper. It's a sort of cheaper place to live outside London. You can get high-speed train in 35 minutes. Accommodation at Rochester is really nice. It's all of the campuses actually. It's either on campus or 5 or 10 minutes walk from the campus. Each of the campuses has a slightly different vibe. So if you look at the courses they offer, for example, at Canterbury, we have architecture, fine art and illustration. So there's a different mix of students compared with Rochester, where I work, where it's all kind of fashion based. So they're different types of students, and that's quite cool. It has a different kind of edge to it, which is quite exciting. Just looking at this, you can see the kind of environment. Canterbury is a medieval cathedral city. It's really cool. We've got light and airy studios. We have a lot of analog equipment, printing, carving, casting, glass blowing, working with wood, metal, plastics. But we also have a fantastic mixture of digital facilities, digital printing, digital rapid prototype printing. We have digital editing suites. We have a fully equipped film school. So we have a really high level of industry standard. I'm going to flick through that because the film's a little bit long. Epsom is where, it's about 20 minutes from London. It's the closest. Epsom is actually London Zone 6. And so this is where our business school is situated. And it's the first of its kind in the UK. It's designed for students that really, it's something some of you might be thinking about doing, that you're really keen to work in a creative field, but you actually come from a business or a humanities or even a science background. You might be interested in fashion business or journalism or, you know, another aspect of the creative industries. And this can be a really good way to get into that. So if you look on the website, there are lots of courses in the School of Business. What's interesting about that is if you wanted to go into the fashion industry, for example, it's a huge industry globally. You would be in an environment where people are studying fashion and fashion promotion, and photography. So all of those skills will help you to be much more in tune with the needs and demands of promoting business in fashion, which is really exciting. So there will be international students on your course, but it is predominantly a UK educational experience, which is what many students want. They don't want to go onto a course that is an international course. They want it to be a genuine UK experience, and that's something we do really well from. So here you can see the fantastic film production facilities, the library. beautiful English countryside where the campuses are set, which is really nice. So this is Rochester, where I'm based. We've got games design, theatre design, acting, photography. A new course is makeup and hair design, which is really popular. We also have Maidstone TV Studios, where some of the film production course is based, and the Royal School of Needlework is based at Hampton Court Palace, which is one of the Queen's palaces, which is quite interesting. Some of the students worked on Kate Middleton's dress. Here we've got the list of business school courses, actually. And you can see the kind of things that you can study at undergraduate level, everything from advertising and digital marketing and social media, all the way through to master's level, luxury purchasing and logistics. So there's a really interesting range there. The best way to do it is to go onto those courses on the website, look for the course leader profile or program director, and then find the email, and they're more than happy to answer any questions you might have. Or you can apply directly to the admissions department, and they will be able to help you as well. Are there any questions coming through from students individually, or?
Yes, Neil, there are. We've got a couple actually. So excellent. Thank you for running us through that overview there. Question from Mesam and Stephen, which is, I have a BA from an Asian country. Can I study interior design?
An EA, that is?
A BA, yeah. So
BA, BA, sorry. A BA. From which country?
They haven't specified this, so it's from an Asian country. Which
and
country
they're wanting to study, sorry, interior design?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. That's no problem. Yeah, that will be okay.
Sorry, Stephen, you said so did I, so I thought you meant you also have the same. My bad. It's just from Messam, not from Stephen. Okay, sorry to put words in your mouth there, Stephen. Okay, sorry. Yes, Neil.
So that's a BA from an Asian country, and they're wanting to do interior design.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, there's no problem with you doing that. That qualification will be of a similar level. It would just be a case of putting your portfolio together and then making a direct application. That's absolutely no problem at all. You would need to do the IELTS. That's the only consideration. If you have done any, when you're putting your portfolio together, if you've done any internship or you have any work experience, that's really good to add onto your CV as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Neil. I know you mentioned this a bit earlier. We've had a couple of people joining us more recently. Josephine is asking, what are the requirements for joining the course, and do we need to have a certain kind of portfolio?
Okay, and this is master's level?
Yeah, that's a good question. Josephine, which level of study are you aiming for master's or for bachelor's? If you can let us know in the chat, that'd be great. Yes, that's a master's, Josephine saying.
Right, okay. I think the thing is, when you're putting your portfolio together, you really want to show the very best of your work. So you don't need to put year 1 and year 2 work in. It will just be level 3, final year work. You don't need to put everything in, but it's really nice actually to see how people develop their ideas. So some kind of research, maybe some worksheets or some images of how your research comes together, the things that inspire you. And then maybe just sort of 10 to 12 pieces of work that represent the best of what you can do. And then you would put that together and make your application. The thing is not to worry about it too much, but try and make the presentation really nice and clean, and also to show a range of skills. I think that's quite important. So if you're applying for a course in, I don't know, it could be fashion or graphic design or 3D design, you might want to show that you've got good digital skills, but also that you've got good making skills. You might be good with making things with your hands, models or maquettes or drawing or whatever is relevant to your course. You just show that you've got a good range of, the hand and the craft and the digital. I think that's really important. and you might be stronger in one area or the other. Research is quite an important part of all of the courses, and I think if you can show that you've got some interesting ideas or that you've been really inspired by something in your home country. I've got a student from Pakistan in my undergraduate course actually, and she's doing a really fantastic project about the changes in architecture in Pakistan, how new buildings are coming up and how they're contrasting with really historic buildings in Pakistan. It's a really interesting mix of culture and heritage, and all of that is feeding into her work. So I think it's really interesting to see where you get your ideas from. Is it coming from technology? Is it coming from, you know, human behavior? Is it coming from where is it coming from? And often it's really nice to see things that, you know, if you're studying fashion, that not all of your ideas are from fashion. Maybe it's nice to have ideas from, you know, film or photography or something different, so that you have a kind of different approach to that. That can be really exciting. So, you know, 10 to 12 images, make sure it's neatly presented. A mixture of different skills is really good. And if you've got a personal statement, that can be really, really nice. I mean, if you're thinking of studying at master's level, you know, why do you want to do it? Is it because you feel it would really add to your skills and help you to get a better job? There might be a particular aspect or even a technique, something you're really excited about that you would like to learn on your course. And I think all of that is really, really helpful to the course teams at the university. They can help to offer you the place, but also offer you the right course, because it might be that there's a different course which is much better suited to your career aims, really.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Neil. I have also just popped the link from the UCA website to the course page there. So if you want more details about, you know, specific courses, you can follow that to get more info as well. I think we have time for a couple more questions. I know that Min has a couple here in the chat. Min is asking, is that okay? Is it okay to study art if I don't know how to draw? It's a good question. I know the answer to this as well.
Okay. There's two really important things that I need to ask. One is which level and which subject. Is it fine art? She's talking about fine art.
Okay. Yeah, Min, if you caught that, we'd like to know which level of study do you want to pursue, and which subject would you like to do? Fine art? Are you more interested in digital art? If you give us a bit more information, we'll be able to give you some advice on that. I'm hoping that the answer is yes, because that would mean I might have a chance as an artist myself. Min is saying, I'm interested in graphic design.
Graphic design. Okay, great. And was it BA level?
And is that a bachelor's, Min, or at master's level? At bachelor's level, yeah, BA.
BA. Okay, great. It's a really, really interesting question. And in a sense, graphic design has similarities with textile design in a sense that you're making images. You're generally making 2D images. So I've met a lot of students that don't have great drawing skills, and they really worry about this and they think it's a problem. There are so many ways to create images, as you know, not just from drawing. We can use photography, we can use digital processes, there are printing methods, there are mark making skills you will learn. So you don't have to worry too much about that. Some of my students are absolutely amazing at drawing, but quite often they don't use it in their work, which is quite strange. They prefer other techniques. Other students are not very good at drawing, but they are amazing with color, composition, mark making, and putting images together. So I think it's always good. If you've got good drawing skills, it's a very good way to communicate your ideas, but it's not essential. So if you're wanting to do your BA in graphic design, it would be really good if you can develop your skills in collage, composition, and really creating interesting images with photography and other methods. If you're applying for BA, I imagine that your digital skills will be entry level. You know, you're learning, it's new to you. So we don't expect you to be brilliant with Photoshop yet. But I think there are things that you can do to create images that show things that you're interested in. You can use collage, you can cut things up, you can use different kind of techniques to create texture and color, brush marks and things like that. So if you are good at drawing, great. If you're not, don't panic. I think you can present a portfolio that shows that you are good at composition and creating images without drawing. So don't panic. I don't think it's essential. It's a good thing to have, but not essential. And I have some very, very successful students who've gone on to get really good jobs that they're not amazing at drawing.
Excellent. Yeah. Guys, I think we've got time for one more question here from Maysam, who's saying, I am in the UK and I want to apply for interior design, but what I want to know, do I need IELTS or not?
But where is she from?
Maysam, where are you from? Which country? If you can let us know. I mean, I imagine, yeah, that if you're, yeah, Maysam, so you're in the UK. Are you like a UK resident? If you're from, okay, so you're from Iran, then in that case, I imagine there'll be an IELTS requirement for you to study in the UK. Yeah.
You will need to have the IELTS. It was quite funny actually. In October, I was in Dubai. And I was interviewing some students studying at the Dubai School. It's the biggest English school in Dubai. And I interviewed a student who was British. He had a British passport, but he'd never lived in the UK. And he'd still have to do the IELTS because he's basically an international student. So yes, the answer is yes, you have to have that. So you need to get that done, or and then if you've got a problem with that or it's something you're worried about, we do have a number of English courses available at UCA. So say, for example, you had taken your exam and you were a little bit below the pass rate, you can actually do an English language course at UCA, and you can top up the score. So you can basically take an IELTS from, 5 to 5.5 or 6 to 6.5. So you can actually improve that. So it won't necessarily stop you coming to us. It might mean that you have to come a little bit earlier and take an extra course. But if you can get that done, it's a really good thing to get out of the way so that you can make your application. And incidentally, it is a UK visa regulation, not just a university regulation.
Yeah, excellent. Maysam is asking where we can find the website for the English course as well. Would that just be on the university homepage, Neil?
Yes.
Information.
Yes. Yeah, the information will be on the website. I think what we could do as well, if we can take any contact details, we can maybe get someone from admissions to follow up and send that information through.
Sure. Maysam, if you can send me your email address via private message, I'll save it and one of our team will get in touch with you, okay? So you can change your settings to all panelists and then send me the email address. That would be great.
Oh, here we go. I've just looked it up actually on my other laptop. So okay. if you look on the, if you just look on Google, and you look at UCA English courses,
okay.
What it will do, it will take you to a page which is called Pre-Sessional English.
Pre-Sessional English.
That's just P-R-E and then Sessional English. And what it does, it will give you the lowdown of exactly what that course will offer. And it's based in the UK. And I think from memory, there are two. There's a 5-week and a 10-week course, which comes before the BA or before the Masters. And what that will do, they're usually over the summer. So you would come to the UK, you do your 5 or 10 weeks, and then you would go straight onto the course of your choice. So you don't have to fly back to China or India or something. You can stay in the country and do that. And what that course will do, it will maybe take your test score up to what you need. I mean, it may be that you've got the required level in your home country, and that's fine. But if you haven't reached the right level, you can do the pre-sessional course. It will take you up to the required level. But also what it will do, it will give you a little bit more confidence in English for academic purposes. So that, you know, this is not just tourist English, you know, it's so you've got that specific ability to write essays and things at master's level or undergraduate level. So here I can just give you the information. So we've got a 28-week course, which will take you from a 4 or 4.5 up to 6.5. So then you can study at master's level. So the 28-week course could add 2 whole points.
Wow.
We've got a 10-week course that will take you up from 5.5 to 6.5, or from 5 to 6. And then there's a 5-week course which will take you up half a point. So it would take you from 5.5 to 6. So if you take the IELTS and you're just a little bit, you know, you're a little bit below the score that you need, you could look at one of these courses and that will lift you up a little bit. So I think that's a really useful thing to have as well. But pretty much everything is on that website. But if you do have any problems, let us know and we can get someone to give you the advice.
Excellent. Yeah, I've put the link to that in the chat as well, so anyone that's interested can follow that. I'll also do a little plug for our own IELTS preparation services as well via our website, ieltsonlinetest.com. If you want to practice at home before you make any application, it's a really useful resource.
We have actually got one of our pre-sessional courses is actually delivered in China. So if there's anyone listening from China, they might prefer to stay within China. To do that, or come to the UK. And at the moment they're currently based at our Farnham campus, which is really good place to study. It's a really nice campus.
Excellent. Great thanks for that, Neil. That's really useful information. I think we are rapidly running out of time for today's session, Neil. So
I hope everybody enjoyed the talk. Sorry about the slight delay. I mean, we're all geared up, so next time it will be seamless. But we had a little bit of delay, but we got there in the end. And yeah, just to say, hopefully I'll meet some of you if I'm coming on my trips to different countries, or if you study at UCA. And if not, please do look at the website for further information.
Thank you so much, Neil. Thanks for joining us today and for presenting. It was a really great presentation and discussion. So thank you very much.
I'm a fan of Zoom now, I think.
Excellent. Yeah. After the initial panic, realized it's actually pretty good software. So yeah, guys, we have a number of other webinars coming up next week. We have IELTS preparation webinars on Monday and Thursday, and we have our next UCA webinar on Friday, where Jamie Dobson is going to be presenting to us. So if you enjoyed this session, please come back to us next Friday. I believe it's Valentine's Day, so hopefully we'll see you there. And we will let those of you that are still awake very late, you can all go to bed now. So thank you very much for joining us.
Okay. You can stay on the line just a couple of minutes.
Sure, I will. I think I'll need to close the webinar, Neil, but I can give you a direct call after.
Okay, that's great. That's fine.
Cool. Excellent.
Okay.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye,
We'll see you
everybody.
again soon. Thank you. Bye for now.